set up and ready to roll this morning. It's nice and chilly out there. We got a little more snow last night. Everything is frozen out there, so see how it goes with the weather for the rest of the week. We have a weird problem. I got notification yesterday that gave us a boil water notice. So that's wild. Apparently a pump broke, caused a collapse in pressure, and with that loss of pressure, I guess bacteria can easily get introduced into the water system. So there's been a drop in water pressure overall, and of course there's a lack of clean water apparently, so that's exciting. We need showers anyway, right? Alright, so we are continuing with Terryl Whitlatch's Science of Creature Design. We've got ourselves an ankylosaur here. And, well, I guess it's not ankylosaur, it's a Pinacosaurus. It looks like an ankylosaur to me, but apparently it's a little bit different than that. So what I'm trying to do is a little smaller, maybe get through these a little bit faster. We're on page 148, 11 pages to go. That roughed in and inking. So I like to work on like a couple things at a time when I'm doing studies like this. So it's like when I set up projects for my students, it's usually not just whatever the subject is. That's the point. It's, you know, maybe there's a media process or a technical process or an aesthetic or a design process that I want them to go through that will help improve their skills in multiple areas, not just in one, so that it gives them kind of a broader application rather than a super narrow one. And so in my case, I've been practicing some inking technique and exploring inking as kind of a more of a rendered skill for potential print. And so in Terryl Whitlatch's case, when she's doing these drawings, she mostly does them in pencil, and then you know, maybe photocopies that or brings it into Photoshop for some quick colors, and I'm not doing the color parts. I'm just sketching it out and pay attention to how she sees structure and application of structure to her imagination. And that's kind of what's more interesting in terms of her specific work, is that deep structural understanding of real animals and how she brings that to her design. So I could just, you know, sketch all these in pencil or whatever, but I want to study inking as well, so I've got you know, kind of rough these in and then ink them in. when I'm done. And that kind of gives me multiple applications. So it takes a little longer to do the studies, but I'm not really in a big hurry. Because I've been working with this book since the beginning of September. And some pages take longer to do those. Like I could spend a lot more time on this, like I could have rendered out all the bones individually, which I have done on other studies here. But doing these a little bit smaller, so that does speed them up a little bit, but I did see a guy yesterday on YouTube. I subscribed. I forget his name though. He's looks like he's kind of in the vein of the classical artists, and but he was talking about doing color studies and things for masterworks or images that he likes, you know, in the studio. And that was kind of interesting. Like I said, I did a similar project a long time ago where I did 50 kind of small color studies over, you know, one a day, spending around 20 minutes on each of them. They're all in oil and all done super fast. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Yeah, but yeah, it's been helpful kind of going through, like this is the muscle one, so you can see kind of how the muscles are all intertwining together and how they kind of relate to how humans are and other animals are built today. And find all that very useful for myself anyway. Good morning, Darth Vader 281. Sure seems like there's been a lot of you over the years. Alright, so let's finish off, I guess, this page so I can scoot this over. Whipping out the calligraphy pen for some inking fun this morning. So yeah, we got ourselves a Pinacosaurus. Thought it was an Ankylosaurus originally, but apparently she went for something less well known. Similar type of armored dinosaur, but I guess it has a unique property. She painted it blue, and the finished illustration is the musculature version though here. I was telling Instagram people anyway, I guess it was in your earliest, but we have a weird water situation here in Richmond where they've given us a boil water notice, which is a little bit more excitement than I would like to have today. I guess a water pump broke at the water station, and as a result, it causes, I guess, less pressure in the system, which I guess allows bacteria to get in some reason. Did definitely notice the drop in water pressure this morning when I got up. I have a little water distiller that I bought a long time ago, been using, and so I figured it was best to top off what I have right now, just in case situation gets worse. I think it'll probably be resolved sometime today, but yeah, like they're saying, avoid showers or take very, very short ones. Don't drink the water, obviously. Which is, some good drama. And of course, speaking of drama, I saw I guess there's a new thing. Meta doesn't need any more. I guess Meta's tired of having W's, so they're pushing hard on the L's this week. So first off, they had their fake AI profiles, that were talking about their own authenticity, despite being labeled as AI. They're pretending to be like a grandpa or in one case, it was a queer black mama of two, which is just weird to have your fake person be busy checking off boxes, to have that be the focus of it. I guess they figured it would put their bot above some kind of criticism, which it did not. They shut it off after a couple hours of them being active. And then looks like they're trying out a new thing where they're auto posting to your timeline pictures of you in AI generated scenes. And I guess the thought is to do that with ads, so you can take people's images and put them in ads. So if someone wants to sell you a t-shirt, they can use images of you and show you images in your ads in your timeline of you wearing that t-shirt. Which AI thing? The Instagram one? Yeah, so they created and they created fake AI profiles. They were labeled managed by Meta AI, so that was their label. They didn't last very long. You can look it up on Google. There was a bunch of news reports about it. But yeah, they created two profiles, at least two that were spotted. And you could chat with them and do the whole thing. And one was Brian. He was a retired black guy living in a retirement home, and he's wanted to have conversations about real life with you or something. Share the wisdom of his experience. And I guess they said originally that he was based off of a conglomeration of several real people. Though that's probably not true. Based off of how they operate there apparently. But so that was one of them, and they all included not just the profile, but there was pictures of them doing things and having a good time, hanging out at the retirement house, with playing bingo or whatever they're doing over there. And then the other one was I forget her name. But basically her profile there was listed as clear black woman and mother of two. So I guess they went for 3 of the 4 main intersectional stylings, I guess, there to give her some kind of justification. And then had like pictures of her hanging out with her, AI generated kids at parties and having a good time, and holidays, and her wife and everything. And anyway, you could DM these AI profiles and have like conversations with them. And I guess they were pretty easily broken by people just asking basic questions about who made them and all of that. Like, for example, I know with the mother one, they said that basically they would just ask questions like, who made you? Where did you come from? And that profile, it would respond, that it turned out it was made by like 5 guys and 1 girl. I think almost all of them were all of them were said they were white, except for like there's like 1 Asian guy that was involved in making the profile. But anyway, people found those profiles pretty quickly. And breaking it was like involved like asking them certain kinds of questions to get certain responses, because the AI it's not thinking, it doesn't have a personality, it doesn't know what it's doing, in spite of what some people try to claim about the potential inherent within them. It just simulates certain aspects and kind of hallucinates reality in a way that humans don't. And so basically you could get it to say things that were inappropriate or weird or disclosing more than they intended. A bunch of other kind of weird things happen kind of as a result of it. And so they shut them off pretty quickly. I think within a few hours of them going live. Apparently you could still DM them. I don't know if that's true anymore. So as long as like you could directly go and like to your DMs and send off one, you could do that. But that was the story there with that one. Anyway, then yesterday, people found that their faces and that were showing up in posts being automatically put into their timeline of themselves, where there were pictures of them that they had never taken of themselves put into AI generated backgrounds. This was done without permission, without prior knowledge, without anything. And the thought is they're probably looking at doing this in order to incorporate people's images into ads. So that way when you're, again, scrolling through the timeline, one of the things they can tell advertisers, hey, if you're selling a hat or a mug or a t-shirt or rug or a living room set or whatever on Instagram, you can take people's images that they've posted and like incorporate their faces or their homes or whatever into the advertisement and show them what it's like to experience your product. Just seems like something that people will not like. I wouldn't like it. I think this could use a little bit more water. I left this jar open all day yesterday. So there's your 2 meta events for the week. It's like I don't get what they think they're trying to accomplish with these activities. It's like no one's going to like this. Like, I'm sure they've got psychologists and marketers and demographics people working for them. And those people probably would have said, hopefully, that, hey, no one's going to like this. Like, it's going to harm your reputation. Yeah, well, it's like, have they ever seen the movie Minority Report? I mean, that's what they were doing in that movie. It was really annoying, Poor Tom Cruise is trying to do his Tom Cruise run all around the set, and, he's being advertised to because they're, doing a retinal scan on him and shoving advertisements based off of his profiles into the, situation, and he's just trying to get away. Yeah, because he's been framed for a future crime. But yeah, so it's been kind of a weird week for that stuff. Yeah, so the more I kind of see what people intend with these generative tools, it's like the worse it looks. It's just like, really, this is like all that you can come up with is really awkward advertising, that no one's gonna like, everyone's gonna be annoyed by or upset by. So yeah, I don't know. It's all kind of a problem, and it wasn't one I was actually even paying that much attention to until recently. And my colleagues where I teach, they kind of made it necessary for me to become more informed because at least 4 of them are very, very supportive of integrating this technology into our education process, and I think that's a really bad idea. And so I've been paying a lot more attention to it, even though I'd rather ignore it completely. I got plenty of other things to do, and it doesn't actually interest me all that much. If I put page number on there, page 148. And I'd rather ignore it, but if they insist, I'll be informed, and I don't think they'll like it because I don't think they're that informed about it. They just want to use the tools for whatever purposes they desire. All right, next page. Yeah, so here's the drawing I was referencing. Again, I could do these in a lot more detail than I have. I just thought, coming up on the end of this book, and so I thought I would start doing some of these smaller. Actually, so it's interesting the comments she has to make up on there about things. All right, so we'll fit the skinned version here. But here I see a lot of kind of like nonsense takes on it. So one of the things that I'll hear from artists is they think that they're going to be the creative directors of this, this stuff, this technology. And I don't think that what I tried to explain before, because it was obvious to me that that's not what the intent is. That's not what the technology they're building does. What it does is it supplants creativity for kind of generative imagery, whether it's video or still images, and with sufficient data, if it continues on the trajectory they seem to be advertising, which I don't know will actually work out. I have my doubts about its long-term feasibility, and especially compared to its expense, and what it costs versus what people are actually paying for it, which we saw evidence of recently too. The guy who runs OpenAI, Sam Altman, who, by the way, is not a technology guy. He's just like a executive type. Doesn't actually do any engineering. But he was pointing out that they're actually losing money on their newer subscription products because people are using them so much that they're actually getting more value out of them or more expense out of them than what they're paying for. And that's always been the case. And that's true of all of these systems, because the amount of computing power it requires to, A, the infrastructure that has to be set up and maintained, and B, the electrical grid requirements for it are very, very high compared to just about anything. And as a result, people that are actually paying to use these systems, they're not paying the full cost of them in terms of just like the resources, much less the company's actually turning a profit, which hasn't happened really either. It's like they just keep building these loss objects, which I don't understand. I know why they're doing it. They're what they're hoping for is for it to become less costly over time, which has generally been true of most technologies. They become, when the big screen flat TVs first came. Oh, hello, Bosch. Welcome upstairs. Do you want to come lay down? They're insanely expensive, and now you can get a giant TV that's bigger than those ones were for a fraction of the cost. And I think that's what they're hoping for with these generative systems. That somehow the something will happen and the costs will get driven down. There hasn't been any evidence of that really happening, but I think that's what they're kind of banking on, is that trajectory holding true. But I have my doubts, and then it seems to me like a lot of the integration of it has more to do with advertising that they've integrated rather than actually having a use case for it. So like Microsoft has their Copilot thing that you can get on your computers, or Apple AI and these other things that are all kind of licensing. Like Apple someone was pointing out, which I've wondered about too, is that Apple is not building their own system. They're not building their own architecture for it. They're not building their own infrastructure for it. They're licensing OpenAI's stuff for their artificial intelligence, and so they're not really invested in it at all. Like that, which is interesting because they're a big company. They tend to advance things more quickly than even say their users want. Like removing headphone jacks. Right, that was kind of a famous thing, and it was a long time ago when they did that. In fact, people were so upset that they built adapters for it. But good morning, Bosch. Come lay down. Get your blanket. Dog finally came upstairs. But So I'm wondering what they know that I don't. So maybe they've incorporated their Apple intelligence, as they call it, kind of as a temporary thing to see what happens, because I imagine the expense behind it is very, very high. But it's been pretty rare for them to kind of take a wait and see approach with technologies that they believe in, and they advertise that as a big thing. I turned all of it off, or didn't enable any of it when I got my newer phone recently. It's like, I don't know, what am I supposed to do with this? Like, it gives me more emojis or something, or summarizes some emails. But it's like, I don't get that many emails, and I'd rather read them rather than, relying on some system to summarize them for me. Opaque systems run by people I clearly should not and do not trust, who do things for their own purposes. I don't know what those always are, but yeah. So, but those are the two kind of big things that happened this week in AI. And it's just the beginning of the week, right? So I think the fake profile thing that happened over the weekend. But yeah, it's just kind of like, really, what are they doing? Like, who's gonna like that? They had to have had, like, again, internal something or other to kind of explain why that was a bad idea. Yeah, so we've got the little ones over here. Let's see, symmetrical, so we'll do that. So, yeah. I saw an interesting video. This something called a Middle Nation. I guess it's this Muslim fellow talking about different subjects. But what caught my eye was his label on the video for how he refers to AI, because people come up with clever variations on the acronym, and his was authentic incompetence was his term for it. He's like, I don't get had a whole bunch of there. He's complaining about like short-term thinking of Western capitalism definitely is a problem. What people don't often realize, though, is that short-term thinking comes from an inflated fiat currency where everything's being driven into investment markets as a result, because you can't save money. You're an idiot if you do these days, and you can't save money for your retirement. You can't it doesn't make any, because the money loses value just sitting in your bank. And so it's forced everybody into these investment markets, which is a result of government fiat, not open market decisions. But he was commenting on it. He says, I don't understand, like, what's this for? All this is going to mean is people don't know how to do anything. And like even today, like a lot of people don't know how to change their own oil, or fix their brakes on their car, even how their car works at all. Yeah, what's funny about Greenspan is who he was an acolyte of in the 80s and 70s, who he hung out with. who would have opposed, this person would have opposed probably every policy that he advocated for as the chairman of the Fed. He belonged to a special group called the Collective, which was Ayn Rand's Miss Subjectivist, free market capitalism. She, the author of Atlas Shrugged, and what's the name of the book about the architect? What's it called? The Fountainhead. Artists tend to like the Fountainhead if they like anything by Miss Rand. But that's who he hung out with. So he did not hang out with John Maynard Keynes. He hung out with Ayn Rand, who opposed, she was a atheist Jew that escaped from Stalin's Russia. Came to the United States and worked as a scriptwriter for Cecil DeMille. So that's kind of it's kind of wild because he, I think when he was initially put in, people assumed he was going to be more of a Randian. That is, not messing with interest rates and money supply and all of that, and then he just went full Keynes on everything. He did not go the Hayek route. Who knows what happened there, but maybe somebody got some dirt on him, and that's why he went that route. It's weird. You see a lot of kind of weird connections like that in government and Hollywood and news. I'm trying to remember. There's like news reporters that are married to politicians, right? And report on them, but they have different last names, and so they might disclose that they're married, but it kind of doesn't matter because you don't think about it. We've got a number of popular commentators who were White House press secretaries, so like George Stephanopoulos, and then I think it was their name, Jen Psaki or something like that. And they're put into these kind of important reporter positions even while the administration that they were working for is still there, which is weird. I would think that'd be a pretty significant conflict of interest. But they don't run those things by me. I don't know why, but no one ever does. The artists tend to like Ayn Rand's Fountainhead because it's about an architect. It's about an artist, and he's got like the superlative vision of how things are supposed to be. The name is slipping my mind, but basically he's supposed to be kind of like a Frank Lloyd Wright kind of type visionary as far as architecture goes, and he gets in business with this friend of his from school who's kind of a lesser mind, if you will. And anyway, this friend from school, wasn't as intelligent or as much of an achiever as he was, despite having a lot of privilege and wealth and backing. Steve Ditko. Oh yeah, yes, Ditko, the Spider-Man guy. Yeah, he was big into Ayn Rand, which is interesting too, because he also made Doctor Strange, and Ayn Rand was a very strict atheist, and didn't like mysticism, and so that's kind of interesting. But he also saw kind of Ditko's kind of commitment to her in some ways in terms of how he managed his authorship over things. So he didn't, he considered all of his work for hire to belong to Marvel, generally speaking. It wasn't until after his death that his I don't think he had any kids, but his like his nephew or something like that sought to get authorship or licensing with Spider-Man. Was putting in to get that kind of returned to him because there was a change in copyright laws that allowed for kind of descendants of people who had made very valuable properties for other companies, because things had changed so much that the deal that they had made wasn't so great. Yeah, Greenspan, right? Well, I end up talking about a lot of stuff a lot of the time. Someone's commenting on talking about Greenspan. Yeah, and he hasn't been around for a while. Is he still alive? It's been a weird, couple of years. It's like the Democrats bragging about having the support of the Cheneys, which was just bizarre. During this recent presidential election in the United States, it's like, I've got support of Dick and Liz Cheney, and I was just like, is that what you really want to say? It's one thing to like get their support; it's another one to like brag about it. Which is, that was bizarre. But yeah, with Ditko, he so he didn't die with like a lot of wealth. He wasn't very, he wasn't doing too great, I think, when he passed away. Similar like with Kirby. I was thinking Kirby's thing was like I think the bigger reason a lot of these copyright laws got adjusted. But yeah, Ditko, he was big into Rand stuff. Well, you go read it, and they're pretty wordy books. Impressive that a non-native English speaker would write these books that would become bestsellers comparable to the Bible, basically. And our characters are definitely really wooden. Yeah, there's a lot of drama and local stuff too. My dad was a regional politician in the state he lived in until recently, and it was just kind of nuts, how insane people would get. He was a county commissioner, won an election, a few years ago. He had to step down due to some significant health issues that started about a year ago. Well, that we became aware of a year ago, but yeah, but it was interesting with Ditko that he created all these kind of fantastic characters like Spider-Man. A lot of what the result of kind of his character was it was his selfishness that caused the death of his uncle. His unwillingness to do something for others. But which and Ayn Rand's philosophy of selfishness, and her selfishness isn't quite the same thing as we think of it in English typically. It's more about self-interest. But she was taking the I think the roots of the word literally, rather than how we tend to think about things in English. Like, for example, we use the word decimate in English to mean like utterly destroy something, which is not what the word means at all, but it's what it's come to mean over time. And so she was just looking at kind of the roots of the word as a non-native speaker, and it adjusted it based off of her non-native understanding of the language. But her understanding was basically that everything. One of the things that there's certain things I like about her, there are things I don't. But one of the things I liked about her was kind of assessing people and yourself on her kind of concept of integrity, which is basically the congruence between what you say about yourself and what you do, and that what you do says more about who you are than what you say about yourself. And so you see that kind of a lot of the characters that she'll develop, where they'll say that they're one thing, but they're in fact hypocrites and do other things, but that you really understand who someone is by paying attention to what they do. There's a lot of kind of pop modern psychology that kind of goes against that, where people don't want to be you don't want to feel bad about the things that you've done, so you kind of recontextualize it to say that it wasn't really you that was doing it. It was some other impulse or whatever. And I think that's just people trying to avoid knowing who they are and personal responsibility for their decisions that they make. So that's kind of a big thing in her philosophy. But her version of selfishness is basically, it's not so much about getting yours. It's that you live by your values, and that your life and the things that you do are an expression of those values. And so she was saying, like, she would give examples like, well, should you jump into a river to save a small child? And she says, well, first of all, if it was someone you're related to and you can't live without them, like if your life is meaningless without that person, or loses meaning because of it, then then you definitely go and risk your life to save that person. Or if your value is to preserve life, and that you couldn't live with yourself if you left someone behind to die, that you're doing good because you don't want to have that guilt hanging over you, then you should probably go save that person if you can, and survive. So it wasn't that she was advocating this kind of Bioshock version of that they kind of presented in the game of her with that Ryan fellow. It's more of you kind of assessing who you are, and then living by that, and understanding what your values actually are, things that you actually value, not what you think you're supposed to value. She saw selflessness as being an abdication of that, so that you basically your value is to live by other people's values rather than your own, and that you kind of abdicate your individuality for something else. And so that was how she kind of thought about those subjects. But in that Fountainhead book, the big thing that happens in there is, again, the guy has this vision of architecture and the way people should live, and what he does in the book is his friend, of course, takes his stuff from him, does it, takes his designs and all of that, and violates kind of their nature. And I guess he had some kind of contract with the guy. She's big into contracts, but the main character had this contract with this friend of his who took his stuff and then kind of broke with the philosophy or the design or the aesthetic or the architectural stylings of it or whatever, in certain ways that kind of broke his vision while superficially being attached to it. And so at the end of the book, his name's Rourke. It's been a long time since I've looked at this stuff, but he goes and blows it all up. Like, he goes into this area where they build all these homes that were kind of based off of his work, and he destroys it all. Nobody dies. There's a whole thing where he gets everybody out. And a lot of where kind of her philosophy comes from. Again, she was in college when the Soviets took over Russia. So when the Bolsheviks won their revolution, she was a student. And so she kind of saw what people do under those kinds of circumstances to each other. And she came to the United States, I think, in the early 30s. And so she was really interested in like the major industrialists of the late 19th century, early 20th century. So a lot of her characters are kind of loosely based around her ideal version of them, not the reality of them, but they're kind of what she saw as these people that were changing the world in big ways, and profiting from them. But then she was horrified by what she saw from FDR, the price controls and the graft and all the other things that she saw kind of happening that reminded her of what she saw kind of going down with the Soviets. Except it was, being officially sanctioned by the government in power. And that's what kind of drove a lot of her work. So I think there's definitely things to appreciate about, Miss Rand. There's a lot of things I don't agree with, but I could say that about a lot of people. But she tends to strike a controversial chord among a lot of people. People try to spend a lot of time pointing out, her hypocrisy. She did some weird stuff. Like she had this thing where she did this kind of husband swap. For a while, she looks like she may have wrote like love letters to like murderers in jail when she was really, really young. So that's really not that it feels like it should be unusual, but it's actually not that unusual for women to do that. I mean, it's not common, but it's not like there's definitely like a psychological phenomenon where that definitely happens a lot. Yeah, so she definitely stands out, in the 20th century. A lot of her kind of philosophy is based off of Aristotle. She was a big fan of him because he was more of a rationalist. A is A, B is B. Like things are what they are, as opposed to Platonists and Neoplatonists that kind of see, a separation between what we, what we perceive and what is real. So basically, Plato's philosophy was, that there exists Platonism, this idea that there's this kind of outside realm where the perfect concept of something exists. So like, somewhere in, the unseen world is like the perfect concept of a chair. That's like, the word like platonic relationships come from. The idea is that there's this kind of perfect friendship that's, unmitigated by personal desire or selfishness that you're engaging with, especially usually it's the comment about the opposite sex, and so that's where a lot of like the ideas around the soul existing independent of the body kind of emerged in the West, come out of Platonism. Because historically, when they were putting your body in the ground, they were putting you in the ground because there wasn't anybody else to put there. And so the underworld was literally, under the ground. And so they were sending you there with your stuff and to live out whatever life you would live, underground, under the earth. They weren't just, putting all that work in to bury you for no reason. Like they were sending you on to the next world, like the whole bit, the whole thing. And as opposed to someone like Aristotle, who's like, this is the world as it is, and that's what we have to deal with. So I think she saw her approach as a kind of an extension of Aristotle. But yeah, she's definitely a unique voice. And some of her advocacy around truly creative, unique people definitely resonates with a lot of people. Like I said, a lot of artists, even though they would disagree with her about everything, because most artists tend to lean pretty hard left. Though I always find it funny when they call themselves moderates, because they're not full communists or something like that. It's like, well, yeah, I guess on that scale, sure, but not according to the average person. You're not a moderate. But artists tend to like that book a lot. After all, how many stories have an architect as the hero of the story? I mean, that's so interior designers and architects will like those books a lot too. But that's all to say that she would not have approved of the direction that Greenspan took, even though, she was very. They were. He was part of her group in New York. I think there's a reporter that's married to Greenspan as well. I forget her name. Um, Yeah. Yeah, he'd be old for sure. I forget the name. Yeah, there's a reporter that he's married to. Um, she probably reported on him, when he was publicly active. So, but yeah, it's interesting the people that are ostensibly in charge of things and kind of where they come from and the sides that they sit on. Yeah, and yeah, Andrea Mitchell of NBC. There you go. Yes, Google still has a purpose, right? But yeah, so I'm not always sure what to make of these people, but I just wish they would stop inflicting the world with their ideals. Just seems like it causes a lot of problems that are unnecessary. What are we doing for time? But it's 1 o'clock. It's been 1 hour, so I've filled up this area. It's like I said, I can talk and draw at the same time. It's a long-term skill I've developed. Oops, missed with that one. Yeah, I'm not sure how my dog feels about the snow outside. I had to wore him out a little bit. He was trying to walk in it, and it's kind of frozen over because it was sleeting all day yesterday. And so we're out there walking around, and he's just kind of stepping on the snow, and then his foot's going right through it. So it's like he's walking around punching holes in the ice, and it's like seemed like it was a little uncomfortable for him to be running around like that. He even wanted to kind of turn around a little earlier, so. Yeah, I think it's supposed to get down to 8 degrees here. Yeah, Boston always gets really cold, right? We had that big snowstorm. I don't know if that impacted things that far north, but we had that big snowstorm a couple days ago. And again, I suspect that's part of the reason why the water pump went out here is related to that. Let's see, today is the 7th, right? 7th of January. Month is moving. New Year is moving right along, and I actually wrote down 24, not 25, of course. Looks like I've done that a couple times on this page. I need to fix that. Wasn't doing it other places, but it looks like I did it here. Yeah, I'm wondering what mine's going to be like here. And we've got a few drawings left on this page up there, but we'll do those on the next page. But that's where we got to today from up there. So thanks everybody that came in. I appreciate it. And talk to everybody next time.